Hello everybody, welcome back to another Walking Dead video, and today we'll be doing my Tales of the Walking Dead Season 1 Episode 2 review. And I don't know how to talk about this without spoilers, so there will be some spoilers in this review. It's probably my most spoilerish review I will ever do or have done, so be warned. So, jumping into this episode focuses on two characters, Gina and Blair, and these two characters are stuck in this Groundhog Day kind of premise where no matter what they do, they die and they reset to, I think it's about just before 4, and the whole premise is they can't make it to 5 p.m. and these characters keep dying over and over again, and this is such a silly premise. However, I felt like it worked. This was way funnier than episode 1, and some people might not have liked episode 1 because it was kind of stupid, it was fun, it was just kind of a show that was goofy. Episode 2 just cranks up the goofiness, and I really liked it. I didn't expect an episode which is basically not canon because of how it happens, with all these characters dying over and over again, and then just waking back up in the office. This episode cannot be canon at all, unless Walking Dead now somehow has Groundhog Day things in the universe. But it is very fun, and it is really pushing the boundaries of what tales can tell. If they're telling stories like this with this kind of mystical thing where people just go back in time when they die. And I really liked it. The story is fun, and because it has the premise of, okay, they make it to the gas station and they try and steal this tanker and they always die, they don't really have to like set up this big story like in previous episode 1. I complained that the pacing was a little off and they had to rush the villain at the end, and they had to then kind of rush in Terry Crews' introduction to get Olivia Munn's introduction. Because we got introduced to the same characters at the same time and the premise is so simple, and we get introduced to the loop so easily because it's not very much to do. So the pacing of this episode is really good just because the premise is so simple and the story is just stupid fun. They don't have to do any setup, they don't have to do any rushing to defeat the big villain of the episode. Nah, it's just they get past 5 a.m, they kind of work together and they decide, because they're always against each other, that's why they're dying. If they work together, they will get through it and they will break the loop. So it's something very simple. The story is very simple, easy to follow. I know some episodes will probably be this kind of mad story, but it was a very simple story, it was a very fun story, and this was such a funny episode. I just want to talk about how funny this episode was, just because the premise was so outlandish, and you had the characters just being over the top and always screaming at each other and always at each other's necks, and the stupid way some of the characters die. I thought this is a very funny episode. There is some downside with this, and I will have to mention, because of the constant excess use of explosions and stuff like that, there is very bad CGI at times. I would have to mention, especially in the truck scene when you have a character on the roof and the character on the side of the truck, you can see they were obviously on a green screen. It wasn't very good CGI with the explosions at times and at certain points. I will have to mention the makeup as well. The walkers, even though they're meant to be kind of day one walkers, they look like they've been walkers for a while. Like, we've seen day one walkers, we've seen the start of Fear and start of The Walking Dead, and the walkers are literally just people with white eyes and a bit kind of malnourished. But if we look at Fear, they just got blue eyes, and that's not really different. But for some reason the walkers here look like they've been walkers for a while. We only see maybe 2 or 3 walkers close up in this episode, and they are all fresh turns, but they seem stupidly pale for what walkers would have been like. I just didn't think, I think the makeup was not very good for the walkers. They're trying to make it like the walkers currently, not the walkers back then in the time period it's set, so there's a little continuity issue with the walkers. But other than that, this is a very fun episode. I don't really have much to talk about because it's such a simple premise episode. The acting also is pretty good. It's not bad, it's not great, it's just good. You have actors who clearly know what they're working with and clearly know that they're meant to be making a comedy episode, so they always hit most of the jokes. I laughed multiple times throughout this episode. It was very funny, and it's mostly down to the actors. And I'm a bit worried because there was no F-bombs in this episode. So did Tales use all their F-bombs in the first episode? So that would be kind of something I'll be looking out for in the other episodes. There's no more F-bombs. I think it's a bit stupid that Tales used 3 in 1 and they couldn't use that. But moving on from the acting, which was kind of okay. They were good actors. They were funny. I don't recognize any of the actors. moving on to the presentation, it was just very generic. So the story was very unique, and that's good. So it felt like Tales. It felt very unique in Tales. It was very goofy and not something to be taken seriously. However, I felt like the way it looked didn't match the way the story was. I felt like it should have looked a bit more over the top. It should have had some sort of thing that made it stand out. It just looked kind of generic. It was very generic. And with the story being this over the top thing, we could have had maybe something to show it on screen, with maybe having over the top colours. That could have helped with the kind of theme they were going for with this over the top story. So it was very generic the way it looked. The music wasn't so good. Now let's move on to my one word over review, and this episode has a great story. The premise is great. It's amazingly goofy. I love how goofy this is. However, I feel like this would be an issue with the season overall, with the first two episodes being very comedy focused and the second one being even more so. It looks like this kind of season will have this very disjointed kind of feel with, it looks like episode 3 and maybe some of the other episodes will be very dark and gritty, and you have these very comedic episodes. It will make the season as a whole feel very kind of disjointed. So that's kind of an overall gripe I might have if we go into the next episodes. But going back to this episode, the story's great. I think the acting was okay. It was a bit bland to look at, nothing really special. And it had great pace, and the pacing was really good. I would have to say this episode is so goofy, so lovable. I'm just going to have to say this is a banger. It is definitely one of the best episodes. It's even better than episode 1, even though I called that, I even said in it, I was like, oh, this is probably going to be the best episode this season. No, I actually prefer this one, just because of how over the top the story is. The other one just felt a bit more like a generic Walking Dead story, and the characters were great. I would like to see more of them. I'm happy with this one-off, over the top story. So this is a great story, banger. But please tell me down below, what do you think about this episode? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you think Tales should do more stories like this, or should do less? I'd like to know your thoughts and opinions, everything down below. And if you want more Walking Dead content, and to see the previous review, look in the top right. The middle one is kind of anything recommended for you. And if you want to keep up to date with all things Walking Dead, make sure to subscribe to the channel. But this is it for me today. So goodbye, peace out, and I'll talk to you at a later date.